You know that feeling when the season ends and you start wondering what comes next? Who stays? Who arrives? And if the team did enough to stay on top. That's exactly where we are now. The big names always steal the show, but sometimes it's the understated signings, the smart additions to the roster, the players nobody's talking about yet that end up making the biggest difference when it really matters. And that's what makes this whole situation so interesting. It's not just about today, but about preparing the ground for the next phase in the right way. If you're as curious as I am to see how all this unfolds, leave your opinion in the comments. And if you're excited about the future of this team, don't forget to like so we can continue analyzing everything together. Without further ado, let's get straight to the point. The Chiefs had already added Spencer Fano, Gabe Jacas, Michael Trigg, and Tim Keenan earlier in the draft process. By the time they reached the fifth round, the foundation was laid, but the depth chart still had questions. Defensive back, running back, quarterback depth, wide receiver uncertainty. Every move from this point forward had to be intentional. And here's where it got interesting. Instead of forcing a skill position pick immediately, the focus shifted to defensive versatility. The Chiefs had already invested at nose tackle. Now, the secondary needed attention, but not just anybody. They needed someone who could fit what Steve Spagnuolo likes to cook up, as Ryan put it. Enter Kilgore. With pick 153, the Chiefs selected Kilgore, a defensive back with positional flexibility. Corner? Yes. Safety? Absolutely possible. And that's what made this pick so intriguing. In a Spags system where disguises, rotations, and hybrid responsibilities define the scheme, versatility isn't just helpful, it's essential. And here's the key detail that stood out. This wasn't just about filling a need, it was about fit. There were other names on the board, Xavier Scott among them, but Kilgore's ability to potentially transition inside or provide depth at multiple spots gave him the edge. That smart roster construction late in the draft, but the conversation didn't stop there. Quarterback depth became the elephant in the room. As of this recording, the Chiefs' quarterback room beyond Patrick Mahomes is thin. Chris Oladokun is there. Ian Book had been in the mix previously, but with Mahomes not expected to practice fully until close to the season, the idea of investing in a developmental quarterback wasn't dismissed lightly. Names like Cade Klubnik, Talon Green, and Luke Altmaier surfaced in the discussion. The question wasn't whether one of them had talent. It was whether the value aligned with the pick. Klubnik was acknowledged as an option, though not necessarily the perfect system fit. Talon Green had generated noise at the Senior Bowl. Altmaier was considered tough and capable. And yet, the Chiefs waited. That patience told you something. They believed they could address another position with greater immediate impact and circle back later if needed. That's confidence in your board. So instead of quarterback, the focus shifted again to wide receiver. And here's where the uncertainty surrounding Tyquan Thornton factored into the equation. Would he return? Could he contribute? The Chiefs already had Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Jalen Royals in the mix. But depth and fresh legs matter, especially in Andy Reid's system, where receivers are expected to learn, develop, and grow within a complex playbook. The name that generated momentum? Ty Montgomery. A small school wideout with a compelling story and developmental upside, Montgomery wasn't projected as an immediate starter. That wasn't the point. The vision here was long-term. Bring him into the building. Let him absorb the offense, refine his route tree, and potentially become a rotational contributor down the line. That's how you sustain success. You don't just draft for today, you draft for 2 years from now. And then came what might be the most quietly exciting pick of this entire Day 3 sequence, Kalen Black. At pick 176, originally thought to be a 6th-rounder, but confirmed as a 5th-round selection, Kalen Black was still on the board, and both Chris and Ryan were emphatic. If he's there, you sprint to the podium. Why? Because explosive legs in the backfield are never a luxury in Kansas City. they're a necessity. The Chiefs' offense thrives when it can stretch defenses horizontally and vertically. Black may not be penciled in for heavy snaps immediately, but as Ryan pointed out, this isn't about finding another seventh-round Isaiah Pacheco story. It's about adding fresh explosiveness to a room that must withstand a 17-game season and postseason grind. Multiple running backs are required in today's NFL. Injuries happen, roles evolve, and having a dynamic option developing behind the starters could pay dividends when the games matter most. What made this entire Day 3 stretch impressive wasn't star power, it was structure. 3 fifth-round picks, 3 strategic investments, a defensive back with versatility, a wide receiver with developmental upside, a running back with explosive traits, and a conscious decision not to force a quarterback pick before value aligned. That's disciplined drafting. And here's the bigger picture that should have Chiefs Kingdom thinking. This wasn't about headlines. It was about building layers beneath the stars. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones. Those names carry the franchise. But championships are often preserved by the fifth-rounders who step up in November when depth is tested. And here's the part that really should grab your attention, because when you zoom out and look at the full structure of this mock draft, you start to see something that feels very familiar to how Brett Veach has actually operated in recent years. This wasn't reckless. It wasn't flashy. It was layered, calculated, and built around flexibility. Let's connect all the dots. Earlier in the draft process, the Chiefs had already added Spencer Fano, Gabe Jacas, Michael Trigg, and Tim Keenan. That matters, because by the time they reached the 5th round, they weren't scrambling for starters. They were building insulation around the roster. They were protecting themselves against attrition, injury, and future contract decisions. When you take Kilgore at defensive back, you're not just drafting depth. You're drafting insurance in a secondary that thrives on disguise and rotation. Spagnuolo's defense demands intelligence and adaptability. A player who can align at corner and potentially rotate into safety packages gives the coaching staff options. And in January, football, options win games. Then you pivot to Ty Montgomery at wide receiver. Think about what that signals. The Chiefs are never satisfied with their speed profile. Rashee Rice brings physicality. Xavier Worthy brings elite speed. Jalen Royals adds youth and upside. But you don't stop adding competition in that room. You keep pushing the floor higher. And, let's be honest, Andy Reid's system is not easy for rookie receivers. It takes time, route adjustments, sight reads, option concepts. There's a learning curve. So when you take a developmental wideout in the 5th round, you're not demanding instant production. You're investing in 2026 as much as 2025. That's forward-thinking roster management. But the decision that may spark the most debate among fans is the quarterback discussion. They talked through Cade Klubnik. They mentioned Talon Green. They acknowledged Luke Altmaier. The opportunity was there, and yet they passed. Why does that matter? Because it shows discipline. Because it reflects confidence that if a quarterback is going to be developed behind Patrick Mahomes, it must be the right fit, not just the right timing. Drafting a quarterback simply to say you drafted one is how teams waste picks. Kansas City doesn't have that luxury. Every selection must serve a purpose. And then we arrive at Kalen Black at pick 176. This is where you saw genuine excitement in the conversation. Not hype, not exaggeration, but real conviction that he wouldn't last